Teamwork isn't just nice to have in business, it's the undisputed competitive advantage. When your team members work as a unified force, your whole operation benefits through higher productivity, thriving creativity, and unstoppable momentum. Welcome to the Impactful Teamwork podcast, where we share with you strategies and tactics to help you develop game-changing teams so that you and your business can make a real difference in the world.
So welcome back to this week's edition of Impactful Teamwork. My name's Julia Felton and I'm going to be your host and guide for the next probably 15 to 20 minutes while we delve into a topic related to teamwork that's been getting a lot of traction and interest because of what I've been posting on LinkedIn recently. So last week I run a webinar about how we can leverage nature's cycles and the rhythm within nature to manage our businesses more effectively. And one of the questions that we put up on a poll this week was, how important do people think reflection is in your business? And overwhelmingly 100% of people said, yes, we absolutely need to spend time in our businesses reflecting. And yet the irony is, for many of the clients I work with, they rarely do. Unfortunately, we live in a society where we seem to be pedal to the metal, I think is the phrase, isn't it? Pedal to the metal, where everyone is working all the time to get things done. And there definitely seems to be a culture of busyness. And I don't know about you, but when I reflected on this, I realized that when I was brought up, I was always taught that I needed to be busy, I needed to be productive. And if I stopped and wasn't doing something, I was seen to be lazy. And at least that's the message in the programming I took away from my childhood. And I see that, I think, with a lot of my clients where they really struggle to give themselves permission to slow down and really reflect on what's happened and restore and regenerate. And why is restoration and regeneration so important? Well, if we just think about it and we look to nature, nature has 4 different seasons, doesn't it? Typically in spring, we plant the seeds and we set intentions. In the summer, it's all about growth and action and nurturing events. In the autumn, it's all about harvesting results and celebrating accomplishments. And in the winter, this is all about rest, reflection, and restoration. And of course, as we're coming up to Christmas next week, it seems really appropriate that in this season of winter, we really need to rest, reflect, and restore. And as I've been thinking about this and talking about this with clients, how do we do this? How do we rest and reflect and restore? And why is it so important? Well, I believe it's really important to engage in restoration and reflection because this is the time where we're actually able to join the dots. This is the time when the learning really happens for us. When we're going through life at 20,000 miles an hour, often we are quite blinkered. We just see the lane we're in and we don't have a very wide sphere of vision. We don't see peripherally what's going on. And yet, when we have this opportunity to stop and reflect, it's like we literally lift our heads up and we can see things with a completely different perspective. And from that different perspective, we are really able to recognize and join the dots about what has happened throughout the year. We're able to see the opportunities for celebration. What are the things throughout the year that went really well? What are the things that maybe didn't quite go to plan? But more importantly, what did we learn from those experiences that we can do and take differently into the next year? And so this is why reflection is so important. And when I speak to my clients as well about this whole topic of reflection, like I said, many of them really don't do it. And yet I think reflection is something that it's not just for the winter season. It's not just for Christmas, when many of us are setting our New Year's resolutions for next year. You know, often people at the end of the year, we think, oh, we'll have a little bit of reflection about what happened. We'll do something quite light, and then we'll make some goals and objectives for next year. But we know that most goal setting, when done in the terms of let's get something done as a New Year's resolution, rarely works. And that's because we haven't really connected to why we want to do it. We haven't recognized the importance of it. So, you know, every year I often say, oh, I want to lose some weight this year. Or I want to release some weight, actually, is much better language to be using around that. And yet I don't, because I haven't bought into why it's important enough. I haven't had time to often join the dots to really understand the impact of releasing 5 kilos would have, say, on my health, my well-being, my mental state. And I can only do that in the pause where I have this time to think and reflect on what's going on, and then join the dots and really get to the real emotional and rational reasons why I want to do something going forward. And I think this is exactly the same in our business. We really need to spend time stopping, reflecting, and pausing and really thinking about, well, why are we doing something? Why are we continuing to follow this strategy? Is it working? Is it not? And a great exercise to do, not just here at Christmas, but throughout the whole year, is the start, stop, continue exercise. So what I'd love you to do is just to grab a piece of paper, if you can find one, and just draw 3 lines down the middle of it. So you've got 3 equidistant columns. And in column 1, I'd love you to put start at the top of that column. In the second column, in the middle column, I'd like you to write stop. And in the last column, I'd like you to write continue. And I would really encourage you to take some time and really think about this. What new projects do I want to start for 2025? What are the things I want to accomplish? What actions are going to help me get towards my big purpose, the difference I want to make in the world, the impact I want to make? And what things do I need to stop doing? Because we're very, very keen often to add things to our list, but very reluctant often to take things off the list. What are the things that we're doing that no longer serve us? Maybe it's a marketing campaign that no longer works. Maybe it's a funnel that doesn't work. Maybe you need to release a team member who is no longer delivering for you. But what are the things that we need to stop doing? Because we can only really add things to our plate if we stop doing something else. Because remember, the amount of energy we have is finite. So if we add something, we almost have to take something away, because we've only got so many hours in the day, right? And whilst we can increase our energy levels, we can't keep them at those high levels all the time. So if we keep adding more and more and more, we'll eventually get burnt out. So what can we take off our list? And this often is the hardest thing for people to do. The hardest thing is what to release from our day-to-day lives. You know, what projects, what people, what places, what situations. Maybe it's membership of an organization that's no longer serving you, or you haven't used in the last year. You know, and this exercise, of course, is start, stop, continue, can be used both in your business and your personal life. Maybe it's some subscriptions in your personal life. Maybe it's your membership to the gym. I don't know what it is for you, but what are the things that you can stop? Probably because you're not really using them anyway. And then importantly, what are the things you want to continue doing? What are the things that are bringing you joy, that are energizing you and getting you into flow, so that you can enjoy life and be more engaged and more productive? And clearly, those are the things we want to continue to do, and even if possible, do more of. So I was having this discussion with a client this week when we were talking about how she is about to recalibrate her team. She's going to go back to what is the purpose of the team and why the team is doing what it's doing, just in order to re-engage and reignite her team. And so we were talking about this importance of restoration, of reflection. And that's something that she's going to do with her team in the new year. But as we were talking, she also said to me, but Julia, it just seems a shame to just do this once a year. Actually, I'm going to build a time into all of my team meetings when we reflect on what we're doing. And I just thought that was such a brilliant idea, because we do need to keep taking the lessons that we're learning throughout the year and applying them. That's really going to help us move the needle on our business and move it forward. We don't need to wait once a year for a time to restore and reflect. We can do it, on a weekly basis. I know one of my mentors often suggested, although I've got to confess I'm a little bit remiss at doing it, at the end of each week, reflect on the week, what's gone well, what hasn't gone so well, take the lessons away. So that would be my invitation to you, to really think about how can you build reflection into your day, into your week, into your month, into your year, so that you're continually taking the lessons that you're learning and applying them so that you can continue to develop yourself. So why am I so passionate really about this concept of restoration? I think the reason I'm so passionate about it is because, again, we see this happening in nature all the time. In nature, physically, it is in the winter season, right? We see some of the animals actually hibernate for the winter, and others just slow down in order to conserve their energy for the times of the year when they need more, when they're breeding, for example, in the spring season and stuff like that. And I'd like you to think about your business having these different seasons. Because when we think about it, the springtime is often a time in our businesses when we are planting ideas. This might be the time where we're setting up a new business. It could be the time that we are launching a new product or a new service. That's the springtime. Then that product or service or that business then moves into the summertime, where we see it growing and expanding. And then ultimately the business moves into the autumn. This is when we harvest the results. This is when the business is pretty mature, it's pretty stable, and we can celebrate the successes of the business. And then finally, that business or that product or service moves into the winter season. And this is the time when the business is to reinvent and transform itself so that it can rebirth in the spring in a new way. So these seasons directly link to a business life cycle. And if you think about any product, it has a start, the spring, it has a growth stage, the summer, it has a harvesting stage, which is the autumn, and then it gets to the winter where it needs to continually reinvent and adapt in order to be reborn. So Apple is very good at this. It's obviously continually reinventing. It takes, a different version of the iPhone each time and reinvents it with new features and new ideas to bring it back to the market. So I've just been studying the whole topic of reinvention with the Reinvention Academy, and it's just so fascinating to see how businesses now are having to reinvent themselves so much more frequently. In fact, to the point where actually we're saying that change management is continual. Almost change management has gone. We're into reinvention. And the latest study by PwC suggested that businesses would need to reinvent themselves on average every 3 years. And 57% of CEOs appreciate that a large percentage of their time needs to be spent thinking about how their business is going to reinvent and adapt to the changing life cycle. And of course, we know the impact that happens on businesses that fail to reinvent. we see their demise. People like Blockbuster, people like Kodak, companies like Nokia. They all failed to re-embrace the reinvention process. And I would perhaps suggest that one of the reasons they missed this was because they were not pausing and reflecting on what had been going on. And because they were so in the weeds and doing the work, they failed to look up, get a broader perspective, and see the opportunities and the threats that were on the horizon that were impacting their business. Now, another little throwaway I just want to put in here about reflection. When we recognize that our business has these different seasons, and indeed our lives have these different seasons, right? When we look at leadership, we need different types of leaders at different points in the business life cycle. So I would describe myself much more as a spring leader. I love working in businesses in the startup phase, where I need to get to be really creative and come up with new ideas and new plans and strategies. That's the time I thrive and I flourish. I'm not so good when the business gets into the other seasons of summer, autumn, and winter. Some of winter I'm okay at because sometimes I'm taking existing ideas and making them better to relaunch them in the spring. But definitely the summer and autumn are seasons that as a leader I don't flourish in. And I know this because when I was leading my business unit at Anderson and Deloitte, I loved the startup phase of that business. Some of you might know I took a business from a startup, took it through the whole business life cycle and eventually sold it. And I love that startup phase. The creativity, the new ideas, coming up with new concepts, speaking to customers about what they wanted. That's what I thrived on doing. What I didn't enjoy so much, and I didn't appreciate this at the time, was that as the business became more mature, I enjoyed it less because it was all about managing team and customer service. And so on reflection, what I was doing was I actually spent my time trying to expand the business into new verticals, another spring activity in a different industry, so I could continue to use my spring type leadership skills. And actually what I now know was it was so important that I had somebody else on my team who was much better at leading the business through the summer autumn phase to be there. So this is a really interesting concept for us as well to think about. What type of leader do we need for what season our business is in? Do we need a leader who's more winter, who's more reflective and can join the dots and see what's happened and therefore come up with new transformational strategies for the business? Or do we need a leader more like me who's more innovative and coming up with new ideas? Or do we need some leaders to steady the ship through the growth and maturity phases? But I think whatever type of leader you are, there is still value in thinking about when do you need to reflect. And as I said, I'd encourage you to think about reflecting regularly about your performance and about the business and engage in that stop, start, continue exercise and figure out what the things are that your business needs to be doing to continue to thrive going forward. And I love when I think about the herd of horses, because horses are great at the art of discernment and figuring what to do. So when something threatens the herd of horses, be that a mountain lion or something approaching, in that moment, the horse doesn't immediately react. But actually what they do is they stop, they take a minute of discernment to decide whether that threat is real or perceived, and then make a decision in that moment to then move on and decide the pace. If it's a mountain lion, they're going to discern the danger and they're going to run fast. If what they thought was a forest fire just turns out to be some smoke of a barbecue in the distance, they're just going to carry on grazing. So this is also the power of reflection throughout the year. is actually for us to really think before we take rapid action. Is this the right action to be taking at this moment? Or do we need to be doing something else? Is this actually a threat to our business? Or is it something else? So I'm encouraging you throughout 2025 to really spend some time and really think about when something comes up in the business, to really look up, look around you, discern, take a pause, and then make a decision based on your reflections about what's really going on. Because too many business leaders that I work with and I see are just firefighting their way through the day, the week, and the year. And they don't take that time to pause and look and see what's going on around them. And if only they did, I think maybe they'd make some very, very different decisions about their business and their life. So this is the final episode before Christmas. So I hope you really found it valuable. Some of my thoughts here on the power of reflection and why we need to do it. I'll post a link in the show notes to the webinar that I did last week, all about the wisdom of nature's cycles, how to restore energy and celebrate accomplishments, so that you can watch that on Vimeo or YouTube. So I wish you all a very, very Merry Christmas. I'm not sure if I'm going to be recording something next week. I have done it consistently all year. We'll see. So you might find me out and about on Christmas Eve. But if not, if I don't see you until the next New Year, have a very, very happy Christmas and a Merry New Year. And I look forward to sharing with you again in 2025. So bye-bye for now. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Impactful Teamwork podcast. Please stay tuned for future episodes and do subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating on your favourite platform. Recommendations are essential for attracting new listeners. Please follow us on social media at Julia Felton and at Business Horsepower. And if there are any topics you'd like us to cover on future episodes, please do let me know. Remember, you and your team are always making an impact. What impact will you make today?